Hello ladies, welcome to another video. I am excited for you to join me in today's discussion. And today we are speaking about how to control your emotions so that you can remain in your feminine energy. And controlling your emotions is an important part of remaining in your feminine energy and maintaining your feminine energy regardless of what is going on around you. When you are in control of yourself, you are able to make better decisions. You're able to remain focused so you can make the best decision. You're able to analyze whatever is going on around you so that you can proceed with wisdom and you can proceed with making the decision that is best for you, best for people around you, best for those that you care about, and decisions that will lead to the best outcome from the situation. So controlling your emotions, it's not about suppressing them or ignoring them, acting emotionless or acting like a man, so to speak, where you're acting like emotions are not there, you're not able to express them or any of that. That is not what controlling your emotions means. Controlling emotions means you're able to feel your emotions, you're able to be aware that they're there, and you're able to stay with them without letting your emotions take over your actions, letting them take over your speech, both written and verbal, letting them take over your relationships, and letting your emotions take over your identity. You do not want to be identified as a woman that overreacts, a woman that explodes or shuts down, a woman that runs off crying when things are not going her way or whatever it is. You don't want to be identified as that. Controlling your emotions means you experience your emotions, you stay with them, but you remain grounded regardless of them being there. And when you are grounded, you're able to act intelligently, you're able to make the best decisions because you are not letting your emotions lead or control the decisions or control your actions. And when you are in control of your emotions, this is what leads to you speaking intelligently, speaking with emotional intelligence, speaking with emotional elegance. So let's get deeper into what emotional control means. As we mentioned, emotional control is not suppressing your emotions. That is one of the worst things that you can do for yourself, because when you suppress your emotions, the more that you bottle them up, they will eventually explode. Think of a pressure cooker, and let's say the steam that builds up in a pressure cooker are the emotions that you're feeling. If it's anger, frustration, anxiety, all those feelings, all those emotions combined, they're in this pot and they're just increasing in pressure, getting hotter, getting more intense with time because you're suppressing them. Eventually they will explode, and usually when that happens, you don't express what you need to express in the most kind way, in the most feminine way, in the most intelligent way, or in the most elegant way, because at that point your emotions are running the show and they are controlling what you think, how you say, and what you do next. So suppressing your emotions is not a good way to live life or to handle whatever situations you're going through. Instead, acknowledge your emotions. Your feelings are valid. Your emotions are valid, and your emotions are here to tell you something. They're here to give you awareness about yourself, awareness about a person, awareness about a situation. They serve a purpose, and their purpose is to make you aware of what is going on so that you can act appropriately and you can act in the best way that will produce the best results regardless of what is going on. So emotional control means three things. It means awareness, it means softness, and it means redirection. So on the first point of awareness, this is when you're aware of what you're feeling, but you do not allow those emotions to dominate you. Instead, you observe your emotions with curiosity and not with panic. So this means when you're experiencing emotions, you're asking yourself questions and you're checking in with yourself in order to be more aware of what this emotion is here to tell you and teach you, and to better understand what you need to know from this experience that is causing this emotion within you. So when you're feeling something, you ask yourself, what am I feeling right now and why? And this question is so important because when you self-reflect in that way, you're able to dig deep within yourself so that you can find out exactly what it is that you are feeling. And it's so important that you name the emotion, because when you name it, that helps you with being aware of what you're feeling. When you name the emotion, you're able to connect it with what that feels in your body. That way, the next time that this feeling comes, you're aware that this feeling is related to this emotion that is within me. So it's important that you name it. It's important that you understand what you're feeling and connect that feeling with how your body reacts to it. So if you're feeling angry, what does anger feel like in your body? Where do you feel that feeling of anger? Or when you start feeling those feelings of anger, where does it start in your body? That way, when you feel those feelings, you're able to be aware that I am on my way to feeling angry. Maybe I should remove myself from this situation. Maybe I should stop speaking about this topic. Maybe I should go do something else altogether so that I don't reach the level of anger that is unhealthy for me and unhealthy for the friendship, the situation, whatever. So that's the importance of being aware and asking yourself, what am I feeling and why? And also knowing why you are feeling what you're feeling will lead to you knowing what your triggers are. It will lead to you knowing what your pet peeves are and whatever else that will activate certain emotions within yourself. So don't neglect the questions of what am I feeling and why. Next is softness. When you are out of your feminine energy because your emotions are controlling you, this is what leads to behaviors such as yelling, begging, and chasing. But when you maintain your emotional elegance, this means you remain grounded, you observe, and then you respond accordingly. And responding accordingly also means responding at the appropriate time. That is part of observing, because when you observe that this is not the right time to have this conversation, you're able to observe when the right time is, and that is what will lead to you being heard because you're speaking at the appropriate time where people are willing to receive what it is that you have to say. Whereas if you don't observe and you just speak whatever and it's not the right time, that could potentially make the situation worse, because let's say somebody is just as frustrated as you are and they're not ready to receive what you have to say and you just want to speak because you just want to. You didn't take time to observe and determine if this is the right time to say something. It just escalates situations more than it needs to be. Whereas if you observe and during that observation you determine that this is not the best time to have a specific conversation, I will wait until everybody is calm, and you notice that people are calmer and you notice that they are in a better mental space to receive what you need to say, what you're saying will be received and the person can respond to you in a way that helps resolve the issue and make the situation better. And then emotional control also means redirection. This is where your feminine energy and your feminine qualities come into play. Feminine energy flows, it does not flood. And this is the same with your emotions. Use your emotions to create flow rather than flooding and making situations worse than they need to be, exploding and just letting emotions run the show in a way that is not good or helpful. So what I mean by redirection, this means channeling your emotional energy into beauty, prayer, creativity, movement, or stillness. So instead of acting in anger, you channel that energy to create beauty. You channel that anger into creating something beautiful, into creating something powerful. So an example that I can give is, let's say you're going through a breakup, you're full of all these emotions. That's one of the most emotional experiences that we go through during breakups. So instead of using those emotions to flood, which could look like seeking vengeance, being angry with everybody that's around you, you're just, this person that transforms for the worst. Instead, channel those emotions that you're feeling during the breakup into flow and let it flow into creating a beautiful life. So this means creating beautiful new experiences, redecorating your room, your home, your environment so that it has a new look and it's beautiful and welcoming and inviting to people. Channeling those emotions into developing yourself to become a better woman, working on your beauty, working on your mental improvement, working on your career so that it grows and you're just better from these emotions. Rather than using the emotions to make things worse, you channel them and use that energy to create things that add beauty to your life and things that add beauty to the world. So now let's discuss the dangers of giving into your emotions. Remember this statement: your emotions are messengers and not masters. Your emotions are here to alert you about something. They're not here to be facts about your life or facts about the situation. If you give into your emotions, they will lead you into behaviors such as shutting down or giving up too soon. They'll convince you to act from pain instead of purpose, and they will cause you to misread situations and push people away in the process. Emotional decisions always come with consequences. You will always regret decisions that you make while you're emotional. You will always regret actions that you take while you are emotional. There's several times that people will say, I regret sending that text message because I was emotional. I regret speaking and acting out of character because I was emotional. I was angry, or whatever it is. You will always regret when you let your emotions lead, when you act or speak based on your emotions, and you can't take the things that you say back. You can never take them back. And if you act or take an action, sometimes you cannot take that action back, and you have to live with the consequences of what you did because of a moment of being emotional. Another consequence of believing your emotions is that they will keep you stuck in a cycle. So for example, if your emotions lead you to believe that the past was more beautiful than the present, you will be stuck in thinking about how beautiful the past was when in reality it was not. And sometimes your emotions will lead you to believe that the past was worse than it actually was. And that will keep you in a cycle because those emotions based on the past are what are leading and directing your current decisions. As we mentioned, your emotions are not always accurate. So for example, I'll give an example on career. Let's say you've climbed up the ladder, and that comes with more responsibility. It comes with more work and focus. And you keep thinking about the past to when you had a lesser title that came with less responsibilities, and you keep thinking about how it was so much better because you didn't have to attend so many meetings in a day, you didn't have to do so much important work or whatever it is. When you allow your emotions to make you think the past was beautiful, you don't see the blessings in the present moment. Instead of seeing that this present moment is challenging you and growing you in beautiful ways, you keep thinking about how life was easier back then, and I'll put that in quotations. You think of how life was easier back then, and you're forgetting how you were struggling financially. You were frustrated because the tasks that you had were not mentally challenging to you. They were not helping you grow. You were just doing things that are so basic. And another example I can give on relationships. So let's say you are single and your emotions are misleading you to believe that being single is so miserable. It's so difficult being alone, like you're just going through the emotions of being single, and you start looking back to a past relationship or to an ex, and you're like, it was so much better then, at least I had this, at least I had that. But when you're emotional in that way, you're forgetting the reasons for the breakup. You're forgetting the toxic parts, the unhappy parts. You're forgetting how much you cried, how much you were not in your femininity because this relationship was taking more than it was giving. Your emotions, and it's only because your emotions are telling you being single is not as great. You forget everything else. But if you control your emotions and you start to think more logically, and you realize that you're better off being single and happy than being with somebody that's making you unhappy, somebody that's bringing toxicity in your life, bringing a toxic side of you. And if you take the time to just stop and reflect on how untrue your emotions and how misleading emotions can be, you will be able to save yourself. But if you give into those emotions, that's when you do things like going back to a toxic relationship or self-sabotaging your job. The example that I gave about the career, that's when you do things like self-sabotaging your job because you think you're better off. You think life was more fun when you were in a lower position. And it's not until you go back to that place when you're reminded it was not so great and I was better off where I was. I was better off thinking ahead, looking ahead, focused on what's ahead of me rather than the past. That's an example of consequences of giving into emotions, and how when you give into emotions, they lead to decisions that are not the best for you, and they lead to you experiencing consequences that are avoidable. So if you're going through something like this, remember that your emotions will sometimes lead you to believing the past was better only because it is familiar. That is not the truth. It is trauma disguised as comfort. Another danger of giving into emotions is that you could project your pain onto present people and present blessings. And this goes back to the examples I gave earlier, where you are letting your emotions blind you from seeing the blessings that you have in this present moment. If you allow your emotions to lead your actions and to lead your speech, written and verbal, you will speak in ways that are projecting pain rather than speaking in ways that lead you to blessings, that encourage relationships with people in your life to thrive, and speak beauty into your present moment, speak beauty into your current relationships, friendships. So be careful that you are not allowing your emotions to keep you closed and guarded, because when you're closed and when you are super guarded, you block out blessings, you block out the good that's meant for you. You're acting, and when you build a wall, walls block out both the good and the bad, and that is how you miss out on blessings, because your emotions are leading. Your emotions are what are causing you to place unhealthy walls rather than place healthy boundaries. And another danger of giving into your emotions is that when you are emotional, intelligence goes down. And this is scientifically proven, as well as spiritually, your intelligence will go down because you are emotional. And on the scientific side, this is because when you are emotional, it activates the part of your brain. When you are emotional, it signals your brain to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. You're into survival mode, and all you're trying to do is survive this present moment, that you're seeing the small picture rather than the full picture. When the part of your brain, the amygdala, which controls the fight, flight, or freeze, is activated, it lessens activity from the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is what controls logic, decision making, planning. And that is why intelligence scientifically goes down, because all that energy and effort is sent to the fight, flight, or freeze, and the logic is shut down, or it's not as active, and the logic decision making part of your brain is not as active. And that's why you make decisions that help you survive the present moment. You're in survival mode, and you just need to make the decision for this present moment, the small part that you were saying. And this is why you make the worst decisions. When you are emotional, it leads you to chasing and begging when you know that's not the best decision. But in that present moment, it feels like it is, because you're in fight, flight, or freeze. You're in survival mode. You just need to do what you need to do in order to survive this present moment. But when you take time to observe, to be grounded, to step back, you see the full picture. And when you're seeing the full picture, you see that chasing or sending that long text message in the middle of the night, sending that drunk text message, doing, begging for whatever it is, chasing whatever it is. That is when you see that that was not the best decision, but it felt right in the moment. And that's what I mean by intelligence goes down. I'm not using that word to be offensive. I'm just trying to express the point of the part of your brain that plans and strategizes is less active because you are in survival mode. This is scientifically proven. And then on the spiritual side, when you are emotional, you cannot hear God's voice in those moments. In the Bible, God's voice is described as a still, small voice. You cannot hear a still, small voice when emotions are loud, when emotions are yelling at you, when you are panicked, when there's chaos. And that's all that's going on in your mind and your body. When you calm down, when you are grounded, that is when you are more likely to hear God's voice, hear His guidance, His leadership, His advice. And that is when you make the best decisions, because you're listening to God and you're listening for His guidance. When you are chaotic and your emotions are speaking to you, you're making decisions based on right now, again, based on this survival mode, based on how do I just get out of this moment, when sometimes you don't even need an answer in this moment. Not every situation needs an immediate answer. Some things you can wait and you can process and reflect and then provide your answer or take action after you've had time to process. So if the situation that you're going through allows you to have time to process and strategize, take that option, because you will make the best decisions after you have done that. And on the fact of spiritual intelligence going down when you're in survival mode, when you are emotional, that is when a lot of lies come in. So let's say you are fearful about something. With fear comes paranoia. With fear comes doubt. With fear comes blindness to what really is happening because of the paranoia. With fear comes so many other things, and in those moments, you forget the promises God told you. You forget scripture. You forget how many times God has come through for you, regardless of how many fearful situations you've been in, how many questionable situations you've been in. You forget what God has got you out of, how God has saved you, because you're so emotional and stuck on the fear or whatever it is that you're feeling. And it's amazing how it will start from fear and it piles up and piles up and piles up, the more that you allow emotions to run the show. And that's a big danger, because when you are making decisions that are not God-led, again, you will make the worst decisions. You will make decisions that you regret, and you will not be happy with the outcomes based on those decisions or those actions that are made while emotional. So what is the best way to control your emotions? And the best way is to let God be God. This means believe scripture and not your emotions. Believe what God has told you in scripture. Go to God when you're feeling emotional, and He will give you a peace that will surpass your own understanding. It will give you a peace that will surpass the understanding of everybody around you. And you will see how you just rise above that situation in ways that were not even your own ideas. God just guides you and leads you in ways you won't even realize, but you will make the best and wisest decisions because God is leading you. So remember this point: your emotions are like waves, they rise and fall, but God is your anchor, the steady hand where truth never changes. The best scripture that I can give to remind you of this is from Psalm chapter 46 verses 10. And it says, "Be still and know that I am God." This means be still within yourself. You have to calm yourself. Be still internally. Those emotions that you are feeling, quiet them so that you can be still. And when you are still, you will know God's voice. You will hear God's voice. You will know that God is speaking. You will know that God is directing you. And that's why this scripture is so deep, because when you are still within yourself, you will know when God is leading you. You will know where God is leading you. And I just fell in love with this scripture over again, because if you want God to move in your life, be still, be quiet. And being still also means you don't have to say something. As I mentioned before, when you are observing, you will be quiet because you're observing. And sometimes things self-resolve in that silence. Sometimes God just moves miraculously while you are silent and letting Him move. Always carry this scripture with you. When you are still, you will know when God is speaking. You will hear when God is speaking to you, and you will know when God is moving in your life. And as we mentioned before, God's voice is still, quiet, and gentle. You can only hear it when you are still. When you are flooded with emotions, you are unable to hear God's answer. And even when you are moving, when you're not still, you're taking this action, that action, that action, you're making things worse. And even though God is moving, you're moving the pieces. So let's say God moves this onto the right. Because you are so emotional, you move what God moved to the right, you move it to the left, you move it to the back, you move it here. And it delays what God is trying to do, because you are acting out of emotion rather than letting God move the pieces, move the mountain, so that it's the best scenario and outcome from the situation. Whenever God moves, it's always going to be the best outcome for everybody involved. Then another scripture that I wanted to share is from the book of James, and this is James chapter 1 verses 8. And it says, "A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." So when you are emotional, you become double-minded. You cannot, in those moments, you don't believe God. As I mentioned, you forget scripture because your emotions are leading you. And that makes you double-minded, because if you stand firm on what God told you, you stand firm on scripture, you will not be double-minded because you know what God promised you. And if you are going to say you trust God and you believe Him to come through as He promised you in the scriptures, acting differently, acting from emotion, believing the flesh, believing what you were seeing rather than believing faith, believing God, it makes you double-minded, and that will not serve you in the end. Because as I mentioned with the example, if you are double-minded, you're moving the pieces that God is placing. He's placing them in that particular spot for a reason. He's moving things in the way that He is for a reason. And I will admit, sometimes God's plan is scary. Sometimes it's turbulent. Sometimes it's just uncomfortable and it's scary. Go to God with that rather than not believing and sitting in panic, sitting in anxiety, because God doesn't want you to feel those feelings. He's not doing that or moving the mountain and moving pieces in your life the way He is to cause you anxiety, depression, or stress. God is not doing that deliberately. He's doing it for a reason and a purpose. So try to believe that. And I know it's easier said than done, but when you are working with faith, but God asks us to work in faith, to move in faith, and to believe him. And if you decide that you will believe him, you will not be double-minded, because regardless of what happens, you will say to yourself, God knows the best scenario. God knows the best outcome. God is doing this for a reason and a purpose. God will save me. God will provide for me. God will protect me. You know that God is doing what's best for you. He's always looking out for your best interests. And he says it in the scriptures. He wants your life to be prosperous, full, abundant. He's come to give you life in full abundance, a successful, thriving, glorious, beautiful life. You have to trust that the path to that is not always going to be smooth. The path to that will not always be peaceful. Sometimes it's scary. And there's a lot of stories in the Bible where the journey to whatever it is that God promised was not easy. The story of Joseph is an example. He went through so much before he received what God promised him. The Israelites, when they were in the wilderness, the journey in the wilderness was not smooth. It was so turbulent, but those who believed made it to the promised land. And it was only 2 people who believed, Joshua and Caleb. Only 2. Moses didn't even make it because Moses acted out of emotion. Moses acted out of anger, and his anger blocked him from receiving the promise. So this is why I'm saying you have to let God, because when you let God be, you will receive the promised land. When you act from your emotions, it will cause you consequences that will take away your promise, that will lead you to not receiving the promised land. And another scripture that I want to share is from the book of Romans again, and this is Romans chapter 8 verses 28, and it says, "And we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them." So if you say you trust God and you trust his will, and you trust his will for you in your life, that means you know and you're saying you trust that whatever happens, it's for your good. God's doing his purpose in your life for your good and for the good of whatever God has planned in this life. And that's why I wanted to speak about being double-minded, because if you're saying, I believe God's will, you're praying the Lord's Prayer and you're saying, Lord, let your will be done. And when God does his will, you're upset, you're crying, you're emotional. That is double-minded, and that shows a lack of faith in God's will for your life. So if you're struggling with faith and you feel yourself being double-minded, pray to God to give you the strength. There are a lot of characters in the Bible who also were fearful and who also questioned faith at times in their journey with God. It's normal. Don't beat yourself up for that. God put these examples in the Bible for that very reason, to show that you are human. This is human nature. Fear is normal. Doubt is normal. But what's not okay is to sit in those feelings and to believe those feelings rather than believing God and his will for you. So always remember, let God be your anchor. Your emotions are waves. They rise and they fall, but God's hand never changes. It is steady. It will carry you through, and he will guide you and lead you to exactly where you're meant to go. Your promised land, this beautiful place that's meant for you. You will receive it if you let God lead you there. So now we will discuss how to respond with grace and not react. So responding is your best bet whenever you're going through something emotional or whatever it is that you're experiencing. Make sure that you are responding and not reacting. So when you are going through a situation, ask yourself, am I reacting based on my emotions, or is this a response that will lead to the best outcome? And if after you ask yourself and the answer is, I am acting from an emotion, I am reacting, make sure that you don't send or act or speak. Be silent, be still until you've processed more, until you've worked through what it is that you need to work through, so you can give a response and not a reaction. And again, remember to name the emotions that you are feeling. The more that you name them, the more you become so self-aware of what's going on within you. You're aware of what the different emotions feel like in your body when they are starting to rise up within you. You know what emotion is activated. So be sure that you are naming them, because that will help you understand and know yourself on a deep level. And then next, learn your triggers. When you are aware of the triggers that activate specific emotions within you, you become more in control of yourself. Because you're aware of this trigger starting, you see the trigger sometimes before it even happens, or you hear it before it activates an emotion within yourself. You know how to respond because you're aware that this trigger will lead to you acting a certain way. So when you identify your triggers, you're able to remove yourself from situations. You're able to respond rather than react because you know how this trigger makes you feel. And also when you know your triggers, you're able to heal them because triggers are there to alert you of wounds that you need to heal within yourself. They're there to alert you of things that are not okay that you need to work on within yourself or with a certain person. And another reason why I encourage learning your triggers is that you don't allow people to determine what disrespect looks like to you or what being unsafe looks like to you. You know what these things look like to you, and that is how you're able to control yourself. So for example, sometimes people will act out of anger because somebody said, "Ooh, that's disrespectful." But it's like, is it really disrespectful to you, or is that person maybe stirring the pot or just trying to, or that person thinks it's disrespectful to them because they have their own triggers. But to you, it's just like, oh, I understand that that person is projecting, so I don't feel disrespected because I can see through that person's action, behavior, or words. So when you are aware of your triggers, you don't allow people to dictate the emotions and the reactions that come out of you because you know what applies to you and what does not apply to you. And then another way to respond with grace is to embrace vulnerability. Embrace being vulnerable without losing your center. You can be soft and still be in control. Your feelings are valued and should never be ignored, but you should always pay attention to what they are here to tell you. Learn from your feelings. This is what makes your feelings so beautiful, and I think this is why God gave us these feelings and emotions. They are meant to teach us things about ourselves. They're here to help us grow, to help us heal, to help us develop. The way you handled emotions when you were a toddler or when you were in middle school or high school is not the way you handle emotions as an adult. So emotions are here to help you grow. You heal the things that made you react a certain way. You learn how to react better, and in this case, we're speaking about responding, not reacting. So emotions are here to help you grow and be better. Embrace them. Be vulnerable. As we mentioned, controlling emotions is not acting cold or acting like you don't have them. It means they're there, but you are in control of them, and you allow them to make you aware so that you use your softness to redirect them to create something beautiful, to resolve the situation or whatever it is in a beautiful way that is beneficial to everybody that is involved in the situation. So always remember, even though you are emotional, embrace them, but speak with emotional intelligence, with emotional elegance. Deliver what you need to say with softness, but with a gentle authority. The next way to respond with grace is to take pauses. I love this one because I love letting silence speak. Silence can be so loud when it's used appropriately and when it's used in the best timing. Silence will be your best friend because it saves you from saying things you regret. It saves you from acting in ways that you will regret later on. Speak less when you are emotional. Speak less, listen more, because people reveal themselves when they are speaking. You will learn a lot from people about how they feel, who they are, how they handle situations, and whatever else when they are emotional. In those moments, be silent, listen, take notes, and you will learn a lot. And this is what I'm saying, when you control yourself, it teaches people a lot about you as well. So speak less, listen more, and take pauses. When you're emotional, let silence speak when it's appropriate. And after you've taken that pause, or it's the right time to speak, you've gathered yourself, you know the right words to say, then speak with emotional elegance leading. So the final point we will discuss in this video is how to remain grounded. So the first thing is awareness. As we mentioned, ask yourself, what am I feeling and why? Name the emotion. When you are aware, you can act accordingly. You cannot fix things or resolve things that you are not aware of what they are. So again, it's so important that you name the emotion, what it feels like within your body, identify it so that it does not control you the next time that it comes about or the next time that you are triggered. Be aware, and when you are aware, the next thing, pray, take it to God. If it's anger, let go, release. Frustration, disappointment, whatever, pray to God. He will lead you, He will guide you, He will direct you. He hears every prayer and He answers every prayer. You just have to stay silent, be still, and you will hear His still small voice. You will hear it. Another way is to journal. Journal what it is that you are feeling. I love this point because it saves you so much. If being silent is difficult because the emotions are just so strong and intense, the best thing you can do for yourself is journal them out, vent on a piece of paper, release, and then just trash that paper, shred it, throw it, burn it, whatever it is. That act of writing itself is so therapeutic. Like, I can't explain it. When you are writing and just taking it out of heart, out of mind, and putting it on paper through action, it relieves and releases so much. So journal those things. And another tip that I can give on journaling is, let's say you're feeling emotional and you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody. If you are struggling with what to say because you know you are emotional or you will be emotional when you have this conversation, write down what you would say to this person. When you write it down and you read it when you have calmed down and when you are more grounded, you will see how what you would have said is so full of emotion and how it would have made things worse. Pull up the notes app from your phone. Write down what you would say. I promise you it will save you, because there are so many times when you're emotional and you just want to say something, and then when you read it, it's like, I don't even feel this way anymore, or I was overreacting, I misunderstood that. And you'll be grateful that you saved that thing on paper or on the notes app on your phone, rather than saying it to the person and destroying your relationship, your friendship, or hurting somebody's feelings, if it's your parents, whoever it may be. So use that tip. Journaling is such a powerful tool, and you could use it in several ways. Practicing what you would have said, reading what you would have said, and just venting. Those are powerful ways to release your emotions in healthy ways, rather than going out there overreacting and ruining and destroying relationships in the process. Next is breath work, stretching, and exercise. When you exercise, you release those feelings, and it's so important that you release the feelings that you are experiencing, because when you bottle them up, it's like the example we gave of the pressure cooker. They will bottle up, and with time you will eventually explode. So find healthier ways to release whatever you're feeling, to release those emotions. Exercise is a good way. I remember when I was going through stuff, I would clean the house from top to bottom. I mean, my house was spotless, but that was how I released those negative emotions, and it helped because I just enjoyed being in a clean house. So sometimes what you may need to do is working on your hobby and just completing a project that's based on a hobby, or just doing something that's new and challenging in a beautiful and healthy way, so that that distraction of the challenge is where you're pouring those emotions out. And while you're doing that research with that challenging project, it's taking your thoughts away from the negative thing and pouring it into something that's helpful and that will result in you completing this project. So that's another way that you can release emotions. So always go to your creativity and make beauty from your emotions. And I love the analogy of the rainbow after the storm. There's always something beautiful after the storm. So whatever you are going through, the rainbow will come out. It will be so beautiful and vibrant if you focus and not let emotions ruin that, because your emotions can prolong the storm and you will be in the storm longer than you need to be. When you release those emotions, you pray, you let God, that rainbow will come, that promised land will come, that thing that you want will come even in better ways than you were trying to control, that only God could have created them in a big, better way, something that you never even thought you wanted or desired, and here it is, God gave you that thing. So to end this video, I do want to give you some reminders. Emotions are powerful, but they are not always wise. Emotions are temporary signals to alert you that something needs your attention, but they are not always telling the truth. Your emotions will mislead you if you let them drive the bus. So remember those reminders. whenever you're feeling emotional, and come to this video when you're feeling emotional. Use the tips and the reminders that we've spoken about in this video to help you get refocused and to help you stay grounded so that you can make the best decision and the wise decision. And then I do want to leave you with 2 questions that will help you see that God is in your life and always leading and guiding you, even though things may not seem to be going the way you want. Things are scary. God's plan is turbulent. Whatever it is, these 2 questions will help you stay grounded. So the first one is, write down 3 occasions or 1 occasion that you doubted God and His will turned out to be the best scenario. When you've determined that occasion or you've reminded yourself when God's will turned out to be the best scenario, ask yourself, why are you doubting Him now? Why are you doubting that He can take care of you and He can take care of today's situation? He did it in the past. He took care of you in the past. Why would He stop now? Then the second question, write down when you were grateful God said no. And when you think of the occasions when God's no turned out to be protection, God's no led to something better than you even imagined or asked for, ask yourself, why am I doubting His no? Why are you not trusting His no? And why are you feeling upset about it? He provided bigger and better in the past. He protected you in the past. Why are you doubting He will do the same now? So those are the questions that I wanted to leave you to reflect on so that the next time you're feeling emotional, you go back to what you wrote down and you are reminded God is your anchor. And if you stay in God's will, if you let God lead, if you believe God and stop being double-minded, instead you choose to believe in the scriptures and not your feelings, you will get to your promised land. That rainbow will be there at the end of the storm, and life will be beautiful as long as you let God lead and not your emotions. And when you let God lead, you will be calm, you will be grounded, and you will stay in your feminine energy. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you again for watching my video. I wanted to say, take a moment to check out my online jewelry store, Pretty Dainty. It is faith-based jewelry that is both elegant and beautiful, and when you wear it, it is a reminder of God's love and His promises for us and His plans for our lives. I will link the website below, and happy shopping. With lots of love, Nia.